As far as I remember, in what happened in 1981, it was mostly my generation, slightly older, a few white kids as well. Um, yeah, a broad range of the working class youth of South London, really. That was my experience. To me, it wasn't a race riot. It was an uprising against the police force. And those who have felt that they've been subjected to brutality by the police, they stood up on that weekend and let the police know that we're not taking this anymore. Affected the lives of people living in Brixton, what happened in 1981, in many different ways. I mean, I can't speak for others, but for myself, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but it gave me a career because later on, I wrote about that period heavily in my first two or three novels. It gave me a subject matter to really concentrate on because of when I really immersed myself into reading and I wanted to read something relating to my experience of what happened in Brixton in the early 1980s. There was nothing there. Maybe there was the poetry of Linton Kwesi Johnson, but in fiction terms, there was absolutely nothing. So it gave me an outlet, if you like, to give a voice to young people like myself who wanted to be heard at that time. And so I use Brixton 1981 to form the backdrop of my first two novels and the police tension, what it was like being young and unemployed and black, dealing with the society as it was in those days. Because we all felt like we was public enemy number one. We was castigated, harassed wherever we went to. I mean, even to look into a jeweler's shop, sometimes you would be arrested by the police, taken away, sometimes beaten up. Those were the conditions that we were living in, and it felt like we was in a police state. And so with the uprising, those conditions still remained for a number of years afterwards. So in the immediate aftermath, our condition did not really change at all. It was only after 10 years or so that employment opportunities came around, that people of my generation found work, found training. But it happened after a very long while, so it wasn't immediate in any way. And so I think that could be the general response to people like myself who experienced 1981. It was very tough. It was the conditions of unemployment happened for a long periods of time. It took us a while to get our grounding, our footing, if you like, to be members of society. My contribution, I joined in with the fighting of the police force. I had much experience of the police beating me up in police cells, and so I had a lot of anger on my chest to, you know, I wanted to exact my revenge on the police who exacted their brutality on me. And so I willfully, you know, I say this, I willfully took part in throwing Molotov cocktails, in throwing bricks, in throwing bottles, because I felt that that was the only way I could be heard, because if I made a complaint that was laughed at, no one was listening to me of authority, and I felt that my voice might as well as be, you know, a feather in the wind. I just felt, and just like many others, we just felt that we weren't listened to. And so, you know, I willfully took part in the uprising on the Saturday, most of the day Saturday, and that led me to serve a prison term. But I felt at the time I had no choice. I had to stand up and try to defend myself, because living on the streets of Brixton if you're young and black in 1981 could mean severe injury, could mean, you know, death. Because, you know, no policeman up to this day has never been charged with a conviction of a death in police custody. I think the youths acted differently. When I say that, there were very similar circumstances to 1981 as there were in 2011. You had mass youth unemployment. I think it was something like 50%. You know, in areas like Hackney, areas like Brixton, the same as it was in 1981. But where I feel that the situations were different was that with the social media now so available to everybody, I feel that there was an element of young people looking at the news, looking at Sky, looking at Twitter, looking at Facebook, and seeing other youngsters going into a store, taking out a pair of brand new trainers or phones or whatever it was. And I feel there was a bit of, they're doing that in Brent Cross, they're doing that in Hackney. We should be doing it down Croydon or whatever other destination they lived in. So there's a bit of copycatting, I feel, because of the social media phenomenon. And so I feel that the just cause that was the march of family members and friends after Mark Duggan passed away in controversial circumstances, and they had a march to Tottenham Police Station. That cause, that just cause, was lost a bit in all this frantic looting that we saw in our towns and cities across the country. And so that's where I believe it differed. That's not to say that looting never took place in Brixton in 1981, but that was an afterthought to the initial determination to confront the police about the brutality and the fact that we believed the police had actually killed another young black man on the night before. Uprising, this uprising. Uprising, this uprising. Uprising, this uprising. We're sick and tired of the ghetto housing and the jam hustler and police beating. We have no work and we have no shilling. We can't take no more of this suffering. You better send for the army and the home guard. We gotta mash up and burn down the Scotland Yard. Come listen people to the Brixton Bar. Police officer, you better put up your guard, go on. Uprising, this uprising. Uprising, this uprising. Uprising, this uprising. We get up in the morning at 10:30. Forward down the hill to the Brixton city. Sight Babylon, then start to talk away. And we start Flintstone and masonry. Police get a firebomb in them belly. And the temperature raised by another degree. While you get a sword, you start a looting spree. Come listen to the words of Yardman Irie Guan. Uprising, this uprising. Holy police car, them still burning. Holy building, them still smoking. Yardman Irie upon the mic, made a chanting. Why enough get to you? Them still suffering one. Uprising, this uprising. I wrote that a few weeks after the uprising on the back of an album, pen and paper. Living in Brixton impacted me greatly because it was culture shock for me. Totally unprepared for it, really was. I was used to growing up in an environment where you say good morning to everybody you pass on the street or sit next to on a bus. But Brixton changed all that for me, especially the tales of my new friends who told me about the brutality of the police. I never heard about brutality of the police growing up in a children's home in Surrey. It just didn't cross my mind. I thought all police were, serving the public. But so that was a real shock for me, and it was just a different pace of life, a different kind of. I didn't even walk like my peers. I didn't even talk like my peers, and I felt like a fish out of water. And so, like any other kid, wherever you come from, I just wanted to fit in to my new environment. So at first I found it very difficult. People used to laugh at me, the way I used to talk, the way I used to dress. And so I only gained that slowly. But over time, I managed to become if you like, a Brixtonian. My personal involvement in the Brixton Uprising in 1981, I remember it was a warm Friday night in April, very warm for that time of the year. And I was shooting pool in a pub just off Brixton Hill, very close to Brixton Prison. And suddenly this young black guy comes running into the pub and he's shouting, he's very excited. And he's saying, murder in a Brixton, murder, someone's been stabbed to death by the police in Brixton. And we've all heard tales of police brutality, but to hear that the police had actually stabbed a young black guy to death on the front line, which was, we used to call Rowton Road, it shocked us. And I remember that night, none of us went to our beds that night. We all went from flat to flat, council estate to council estate, house to house, road to road, discussing and debating, and there's arguments about what are we going to do about this? You know, they're killing us on the streets now. Because everyone hated the police. It was like a them and us situation. It was like a mini war, if you like. You know, they were the hated enemy. And so it was decided that we was going to confront the police on a Saturday morning. So on a Saturday morning, we all went down to Brixton en masse from about 9:30 in the morning, looking for confrontation with the police. And the tension slowly rose throughout the morning, and the pavements were heaving with young black guys, and the police were walking in sixes and sevens, and they're bad-eyeing us and we're bad-eyeing them. And, you know, we're kind of looking for something to happen because we were still seething and angry about what happened to this young black guy the previous day. It actually turned out later on that it wasn't the police who stabbed this young black guy, but because of the way the police treated young black people, everyone instantly believed it, and everyone, you know, was ready for the confrontation. And so we were just waiting for something to spark us off. And the police obliged sometime after lunchtime. They stopped a minicab driver, and his name was Wadada. He's quite famous in Brixton. He's an African minicab driver. And the reason he was well known because he was an innocent guy. He never got himself involved with any hustling. He never smoked, he never drank. But for some reason, the police decided to pull him out of his taxi cab, and they started to manhandle him. And they started to beat him around his head. They started to use the truncheons on his legs to make him kind of kneel down in front of them. And a shout happened after that from us saying, you know, leave him alone. He hasn't done anything. That's Wadada. You know, he's not, you know, he's an innocent guy. And the police turned around. They offered us some racist expletives. You know, they treated us like nothing as usual. And the tension was slowly rising. And an older guy than us, and he went by the name of Johnny Brixton, he walked across the road to confront these 6 or 7 policemen. And the police even ignored him. And Johnny Brixton drew back a fist, and he punched the first officer, knocked him spark out cold. And then all hell broke loose after that. I remember us running from outside of the road, from the pavement, and we managed to free Wadada. The police who were there, they got a beating. And the next thing we knew, a police van screeched to a halt from out of nowhere. And usually in these occasions, when you saw a police van, people would run away, but not on this occasion. It was quickly surrounded by scores of us. And we rocked the van from side to side. It tipped over. The police in the van trying to cover their faces because there was breaking glass. We smashed the windscreen, and they were screaming inside the van, and it was quite empowering that we got this control over them. For so long, they've had control over us. They've done to us what they liked, but now we had the power, and there was no escape for them. And they got a beating, and those police guys in the police van, they got a serious beating until reinforcements came, and sirens came from every direction. And the battle started from there, and we felt we wanted to defend the front line, the Rowton Road area. So we kind of moved up that road, and the police were opposite us. And in those first hours, they just didn't know what to do to handle us. They only used dustbin lids to protect themselves. We were throwing bricks, Molotov cocktails, anything we could lay our hands on. In fact, in some of those houses up the front line, they had low walls, and we kicked them down, hacked them down for ammunition to throw at the police. And so again, they seemed very disorganized. We didn't know what to do. And in fact, we were quite organized. We used guerrilla tactics. For example, on some occasions, fast runners like myself would run up to the police lines with bottles, glass, anything we could lay our hands on, and we would throw these missiles into the police ranks. And then the police would chase us, and we would lead them into ambushes. And again, they would get another beating. And this carried on for hours until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And then the fire engines were trying to quench all the fires because cars were just lit, petrol taken out, and we used that to firebomb places that we felt were interest. Like there was one famous pub, I think it was the Windsor Castle pub, that we all believed was a racist pub, and that we burned that to the ground. And because of the fires, the fire engines came, and it was only when the police commandeered the fire engines and turned the hoses on us that they managed to calm down the situation. We started to melt away into the night, because when you're faced with a fire hose spurting at you, it's impossible to stand up. And so we decided to melt away, and then I noticed about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, all the off licenses, corner shops in the whole district were looted, every single one. And it was quite surreal, you know, these alarm bells just ringing through the night, and everything taken, drink, sweets, cans of fizzy drink, all this, the shelves just totally emptied of all the goods. And there was quite a surreal sight in Brockwell Park when I was making a shortcut to Herne Hill, to my friend's house on Herne Hill. And near the tennis courts, there were these tramps, and they obviously took part in the looting, and they were drinking whiskey, bottles of rum. They had loads of chocolate, and they were dancing around, you know, having some kind of party. And because of the looted beer and looted drink, parties just broke out all over the borough, because everyone had free drink. So there's parties all over, especially where I came from, Brixton Hill. Parties on every street, every estate. You know, everyone was partying. But in early hours of Sunday morning, say 6, 7 o'clock, you had to be very careful going home, because the dreaded SPG, as a special patrol group, snatch squads were roaming up and down in their vans, and they were very violent, very violent. So if you got caught, you would be taken to the cells, and you would be severely dealt with. And the police station of Brixton that night was swimming with blood. There was blood on the walls, blood in the toilet bowl, blood everywhere, you know, from the police exacting their revenge. And Johnny Brixton, he was unfortunately caught that night, and he was dealt with, you know, and he's suffering even today because of treatment he had over 30 years ago. So they took quite brutal revenge, because in those days there was no tape recordings, no CCTV in police cells, so the police could do what they wanted. And I remember sleeping. I got to my bed something like, after I partied, I went to sleep for about 2 hours, you know, because adrenaline's still rushing. You want to be on the streets and see what was happening. And so on a Sunday morning, about 10 o'clock, I walked down Brixton Hill, and the police had managed to get control of central Brixton. And the members of the public just could not get close to the central Brixton. And the police had a ring of steel, and you could see them in their sitting outside their vans. I mean, there was hundreds and hundreds of police reinforcements from all over London and even further afield. And I wasn't even aware that looting of the high street had taken place, like clothes and so on. And I saw friends of mine wearing new shoes, new shirts, wearing new rings, new hats. And it was quite surreal, because they were walking towards the police, showing off their new jewellery. Look at my shoes and look at my rings, and teasing the police. It was so funny. So that's what I remember the Sunday morning, the teasing of the police. And then I think sometime in the afternoon, the Home Secretary, William Whitelaw, he came down to inspect the damage. And he was abused. You know, we tried to get close to him, couldn't get close. He was protected. We really wanted to get him, you know, wanted to stone him or something, you know, because we felt he was the enemy. Just like the rest of the government, Thatcher's government, they were the enemy, and we felt we was in a war situation. We really wanted to get our hands on those people who, you know, had these policies that made 50% of young people living in Brixton unemployed. In the immediate aftermath, it was, personally, I was shocked. I walked along the streets, I see the damage, and I remember friends of mine couldn't even cash their gyros that they got from the unemployment office, and we wondered how life would change for us, but the jobs still weren't coming. The police, in their reaction, they felt that in their response, they didn't address their racist attitudes in any way. They just made sure they wore armor for the next confrontation. That's how I saw it, because the attitudes didn't change the way they spoke to us in any way. And so really, we kind of lost out. And in fact, there was regret there that we didn't take the protests and the riots up into Whitehall, you know, right in the heart of government. I remember many of my friends were talking about that, you know, because we still felt we wasn't listened to in any way. And I feel that the police only recognised that they were institutionally racist was after the Macpherson report was published, after the Stephen Lawrence case. And but progress took a long time in coming, I believe. And even now, you know, there is still no conviction of a police officer for the death of anybody in police custody or supervision up to this day. And there's been hundreds of deaths that's been happening in police custody over the years. So the police still have some work to do, I believe, in that regard. You know, they have to be accountable for their actions, just like any other members of the public. Because if I commit a crime, then I'm made accountable. I have to serve whatever punishment there is. And the police should be forced to do the same. But I think in regards to especially the black community, we see them as getting away with murder so many times. So there's still a bit of anger there because this has not been addressed as yet. I believe our actions and my actions were justified because we felt we were living in a police state. I mean, there's no doubt that crime was taking place in Brixton, you know, hustling and selling weed and so on. But the response from the police, I mean, for smoking a spliff, could your skull be cracked open with a truncheon in a police cell? Torture tactics. I mean, when I was arrested 3 weeks after the riots, I remember I was taken into this police van. I was not allowed to sit on the bench of this police van. I was held down. I was handcuffed, my hands behind my back. My fellow, my peers inside the police van with me, some of them were rusters. They had their locks pulled out from their scalps. We got continually kicked in the face, in the back of the head, all over the body, in the groin area, in the genitals. We were dragged into police stations. We were beaten up repeatedly in police stations, tortured even. They used to put our feet on the skirting board of the police cell. And they also used to bang on your cell door every hour or so you could not sleep. And then you were questioned some 1.5 or 2 days later. And so with this brutality, is it a surprise that we was looking for confrontation? So no, I do not regret in any way, because they were a renegade police force as far as I'm concerned. And you know, I came from the Surrey countryside. I was not expecting this, you know, Her Majesty's police to behave in this way, but they did. And they've even admitted in behaving in recent years, they've admitted the brutality in certain interviews and recordings. I was on one of the BBC radio programmes where there was a police officer who was operative at that time, and he admitted to these atrocities. You know, as I said, it was like living in a police state. And so, no, I do not excuse my actions because I felt it's necessary, because we felt we were targeted, we felt we were being killed, we felt we had to defend ourselves. I'm not sure how they got information on me, but 3 weeks after the riots, they pulled up outside my social services unit. There was about 2, 3 police vans at the front, there was another 2 at the back, there was no escape, and they broke down the door and we was dragged into the police vans and we was treated in the way I described, you know, after brutality. You know, there's no after you, sir. You know, you was kicked, you was your hair was pulled or your locks pulled out of your scalp, you was kicked in the mouth with those steel cap boots that they have, and when we complained, we were told to shut up. We were, you know, called racist names. That's what it was like in 1981. That was a reality of being a young person in 1981.